Alright, here we go. Here are some notes for what we will be doing the next week or so. We're going to start with the RACE acronym, which I know you have seen in English class, but will carry over into literature, obviously. So first, I know you've seen this before. RACE stands for Restate, Answer, Cite, and Explain. So you are restating the question. You're given the question, you restate it as a statement, making sure that you are answering the correct question. So that's the A part. Answer the question that is being asked, and make sure you also answer all parts of the question. The C, which is what we will be really focusing on today, is citing the source. So you need to tell where you found the example and details in the text. There's two ways you can do this, either from an inference, where you pull ideas on your own and create a citation, or you use a direct quote. I will be giving you examples of that later. And then the E is explain, so you'll be explaining or elaborating on your response. You can give more evidence and more support and add your own thoughts. Here you will be able to add your opinion. So next we will move on to the rubric, which I know you have seen from Mrs. Reichard, which is this one here. So really what you're looking for is the high proficiency right here. That's what we want. So when you're restating, the question is clearly restated or reworded in the response, and the reader knows what to expect as they read on. Within the A, or answer, the question is answered fully and correctly, showing that the writer knows what is being asked. Citation, you definitely want more than one example, so 2 or even 3. Examples are provided. They are relevant to the question, so they relate to the question, and they are fully supported. They fully support the answer, and the text location is clearly cited. So it's found on page 2, it's in paragraph 5, things like that. And finally, you have to explain your citation. You can't just leave it hanging. The response supplies reasoning and or inferencing, which strongly supports the answer. So you'll be seeing this rubric quite a bit. But now what I want you to do is get the paper that looks like this. And I want you to go ahead and cut out the big rectangle, so this one and this one, and then use the example that I have given you in the classroom and go ahead and paste this in your notebook. So you may want to pause right now. Next, what I want you to do is follow this PDF. I'll just go through it briefly. It's about citing evidence and what it means, so learning to write better by citing evidence to support a claim. And you guys are also going to learn how to write a claim eventually. So when we examine an author's message, it's often called the central idea or main idea, which you guys know. So the reason the author is writing, also called the author's claim. So it's important to examine the way an author supports his ideas. So main ideas, and then we have our supporting details. So when we're looking for this evidence, we can call ourselves detectives. So this makes each of us a sort of detective looking for the evidence an author uses to prove his or her point of the article or piece of text. There are many ways we can conduct our detective work as we closely read a textual passage. So here we go. We can look for different types of evidence, such as facts, statistics, that's the numerical, the numbers, examples. You can even use expert testimony, which you might not see a whole lot, or it would be narrative pieces, and logical reasoning, and we might not get too much into that. We can organize the evidence that we found from the text by maybe highlighting the text where the evidence is found, which I would highly encourage. You could take notes in your notebook on where you found the evidence, create a graphic organizer, maybe with main idea, details, evidence, and then you could even develop an outline if you so choose. But when we begin to write about our detective work, what do we do with the evidence that we've found? So once you found the evidence, now how do you incorporate it? So what does it mean to say evidence? Probably the best thing to remember about any writing task that asks us to cite evidence from the text is that the task is asking us to use the evidence. Using evidence means that we need to explain how the author supports his claim by presenting a particular fact or example. We will be practicing this a lot. This means that we will make a direct reference of the evidence and we will elaborate, so we have to explain our reference, how that one particular piece of evidence proves the author's claim. So we're answering the question through our reference and our elaboration. We're going to skip that one. But how does this direct reference of the evidence look like in my written response? It can take different forms. So we have direct quotation. Remember, if you use the exact words of the author, you need to use quotation marks and give the author credit. Otherwise, it is all known as plagiarism. We can also paraphrase, which we have been working on quite a bit, so taking the author's words and putting it into your own words. Summary, we've done this as well, so this would be a longer statement, maybe for a longer piece. So how did that detective work pay off? Do you see how we can cite evidence in different ways? There's not just one right way, so we'll be using that quite a bit. So we can use the evidence to explain how the author supports his claim. Now what I want you to do is get the paper that looks like this. Yours is not in color, I know, but I do want you to cut it out and put it in your notebook for future reference. I want you to take a look at the different ways you can write evidence. So when you find your evidence, this is how you would introduce it. Okay, so if you're looking at a poem, which might be later this year, you would say, according to the speaker, because a speaker is used in a poem. Looking at fiction pieces, which we'll get to second quarter, the narrator says or the character says. We'll get into that more later. What I want you to focus on now is the nonfiction. So the author writes that, or the author states, things like that. I do want you to take time to look over what you should write and what you should never write. These are very common mistakes here, and these are some examples of what you can do. If you look over to the bulletin board with the orange and green paper, it also gives you some examples of how to introduce your citation in your writing. If you have any questions, please let me know, but right now you should be cutting and pasting this into your notebook as well.